back. I'm Tedward, and today, thanks to Bond Group in Waltham, Massachusetts, we're driving a manual DB9. This titanium silver DB9 is from 2007. It has the AM11 naturally aspirated V12, 6 liters indicated on the engine, but we all know it's a 5.9. That's okay. 6.0 looks mighty cool on this. And the DB9 is a really special vehicle because this made Aston Martin a modern luxury superpower, because the DB7 that preceded it, well, they're fun to drive. And I do love a DB7, don't get me wrong, but they're not built great. They rattle, they don't feel that special. Even the rear taillights are from a Mazda with a little shroud around them, whereas this, the DB9, is built on the Gen 1 V8 platform because it can be stretched vertically and horizontally. They put this with the Vantage, the DBS, the Vanquish, the Virage, and it really gave Aston Martin an opportunity to make some money on a single platform and alter it for the use case. And the DB9 was not named the DB8, I believe, because they didn't want people thinking that they went to a V8 after DB7. And I do think, honestly, that this is the sweet spot in Aston Martin history, because as much as a DB11 is a fun, fine car to drive, I think this feels quintessentially Aston Martin. Gluing us to the road up front is a 235 section tire and a 275 section tire in the rear. We've got 450 horsepower to work with. Let me show you under the hood, and when I open this door, you'll be greeted with this incredible red leather interior. Oh man, there's no way not to feel special when you get in here. And what's great is the use of different materials. Sure, there's still a few little plastic pieces here and there that may not be the most impressive, blinker stocks, etc. But the leather on the doors, the wood on the doors, the metal, all this stuff just really comes together and makes you feel like you're in an expensive British Grand Tourer. And it does that quite well. When we open the hood, this is where we start to see where they got creative and had fun building these cars, because here is our 6-liter NA V12, and if you look at the placement, most of it is behind that front axle. So they definitely made strides in order to keep this well balanced and rigid. You can see some of the chassis bracing and things, and it is a great car to drive. But the coolest thing about this car is that we get the Graziano manual and not the ZF 6-speed automatic. But if you're gonna have an Aston Martin, you might as well row your own gears and be the sporting motoring gentleman that you deserve to be. And as this airplane goes over and ruins my audio, we'll take a look in the trunk, and reasonable space. Of course, we have our Aston Martin umbrella, which is cool because this one is still wrapped in the original plastic. This car has 12,000 miles. It's an original owner, and I believe that when Bond Group was Aston Martin New England, this was delivered to Aston Martin New England, and now it is up for sale. So you can always take advantage of a depreciated V8 platform car. Get yourself an NAV12 instead of spending that crazy money for something new today. But let's jump in and take it for a drive. Oh, we've got the swan doors, and on a hill, sometimes these pistons, they're just not enough. The keys in these DB9s are very old school. No teeth here. You've just got this old sort of skeleton key thing. And then your start-stop button there. So it's a 2-step process. We're going to go ahead, pop this in here. Turn that on. We get power, beauty, soul. Yes. And then fun little Aston Martin graphics on the little LCD screens. We can clutch in. And these things just start so beautifully. You get that awesome big V12 sound, which is fun because I love the starter sequence on any V12, whether it's a Lamborghini or an Aston Martin. And then down here, parking brake. This is something that I still wish they kind of carried on today, because this parking brake is currently engaged, even though it's down. But they do that so that we can get out of the car. So in order to disengage it, we pull up till there's a little bit of tension, push the button, and then down, and you'll notice that that goes back up. Now, if we wanted to engage that parking brake, I'm teaching you guys how to get away with valeting an Aston. You pull up and then push down. Now it's engaged, and then same sequence to get it back down. No dog leg here, a proper 6-speed, something that I appreciate because I do not love the 7-speed dog legs that they put into later generations of these cars. They're not for me, man. The only gripe I have before we set off is every DB9 I have ever driven with a manual transmission, the clutch catches so high. And let's not forget to mention, this is a transaxle car. The transmission is actually back there. So in case you were wondering, no, there is just a torque tube that goes back to that gearbox. In addition to the clutch catching a little high, it feels a little vague, and that's not unique to this car. Like I said, I've driven a bunch of these. I think we've had a few on the channel, a few that I didn't put on the channel just because I was doing photography for them, but I've always felt like I've had to adapt to a manual Aston Martin for the most part, just about every one of them. Yeah, see, like, you're expecting it to catch. It catches right at the top, and that's not a bad thing. You just have to get used to it. You just have to, like, think about it. And I'm sure some of you are clever enough to adjust it. It's just that, when it happens on 3 or 4, you're like, okay, this is just how they came from the factory. Let's nudge it off the line a little bit. It's awfully wet out in certain sections. There's pretty much no shot that we're gonna get wide open throttle in second gear and hook up, but we're in third right now. Still feel it slithering just a tiny bit. It's putting it down, but it's just there. This definitely has plenty of torque. And like, modern cars, I think, are like too fast for the most part. I mean, this is still a very fast car, but it doesn't melt your face off. DB11, which I was driving the other day with its twin turbo V8, not the V12 variant, really couldn't put anything down. It was very difficult to drive that car with even a hint of throttle in cold temperatures with any moisture on the ground. Whereas this, I feel like, is a little more manageable. So as we get stuck behind this beat up but still gloriously on the road Accord, let's talk about ride quality and comfort. It's a rigid platform. Like, you don't really feel any chassis flex in these. It's really strong. It feels like you could chuck this into a corner and would be just happy. It's just that it's littered with leather, and it's not the lightest thing in the world. Sure, you've got an aluminum hood and all those kind of little lightweight bits, but it's a big car. That being said, it's still a darty enough front end, and it supports itself so well on the suspension. The only drawback, I suppose, is the fact that you do feel a lot of granularity and texture in the road. Now, to me, that's a good thing. That tells me that we are in a sports car. We're in a car that's transmitting information and data from the road to the driver. For some Aston owners, they may disagree because they're looking for something a little more comfortable. They wanted to waft over the thing, in which case I would just kindly direct them toward Rolls-Royce or Bentley. It is very difficult to make a luxury sports car. There's a lot of them out there. Even the BMW, essentially, an M3, an E92 M3 is a luxury sports car if we're really taking a look at it. And that means there's compromises. Typically, the compromise is going to be weight or suspension setup. And sometimes these things do not become clear until you take them onto a racetrack. In which case, most people never know that there's any compromise to their beautiful sports sedan or coupe. But the thing is, if you're like really hardcore, dipping into corners and all that stuff, you are going to start to notice it. You are going to start to feel like the front end push a little bit. You're going to notice that it's got some weight and that you need to tiptoe around that weight to smoothly carry it around a corner. And lucky for you, they depreciated like rocks. Well, lucky for you if you don't own one, because this means that if you're interested in this, in getting into an Aston Martin, maybe your first Aston Martin, you can do that for like reasonable money. Like you can get a nice one for somewhat reasonable money. You do not have to spend $100,000 to get into an Aston Martin. And there we sit happily, 65 miles an hour, 2,300 RPM in 6th gear. It's a happy car. Smart cyclist with bright clothing and lights. That's what we like to see. So that's going to do it for me in the Aston Martin DB9 Manual. Beautifully appointed with titanium silver and red inside. I always think you got to do a fun color inside an Aston Martin. Boring on the outside, exciting and splashy on the inside. That's the key, especially in a Volante model, a convertible, because when you put the top down, you want it to pop. I digress. Thanks to Bond Group for the opportunity to drive this. Thank you guys for appreciating some sort of, classic is a scary word to use for 2007, but it feels like we're getting there. Some more classic or organic motoring experiences. You know, something a little more simple. We've got a NA V12, no nannies. We've got a manual transmission. We've got the goods. Like this kid's looking. We've got people like it. People see this and they say, whoa, that's class. And I would assume that somebody hunting for one of these who wants this experience is going to go for the more heightened experience of a manual over the automatic. And I think you're right. Even though I'm not in love with this clutch, but you do adapt to the car and you get there. So thank you so much for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. Don't forget to respect the drive, and I'll see you in the next one. One thing I love about these cars is the weight of the steering wheel. It's hydraulically assisted. You get information through the steering wheel. It's not numbing you from it like a lot of the electric assists.